Our witnesses joining us for today's hearing are Steve Pirner, Secretary of the South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Ward Scott, Policy Advisor, Western Governors Association, Stephen Mulligan, Legislative Attorney, Congressional Research Service. I want to thank you all for being here. And I would at this point turn to our first witness, Secretary Pirner, for 5 minutes. I can't say enough, and I'm just going to do this as a special introduction. Secretary Pirner was the Secretary of Water and Natural Resources when I was governor. He was secretary before I became governor. He has been one of the stellar individuals with regard to his knowledge, his interest, and his intensity in making sure that we have clean air, clean water, and that we understand the relationship between the federal and state government. And I know he is irritated every time I ask him to come to Washington, D.C. He'd rather be along the shores of the Missouri River and Pier, particularly in the summertime, but I most certainly appreciate your participation in this hearing today. And so with that, Secretary Pirner, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Senator Rounds. Ranking Member Booker and members of the committee, my name is Steve Pirner, Secretary of the South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources. You all have heard about the Waters of the U.S. rule proposed by EPA. Many labeled that rule as the largest federal takeover of our nation's water resources ever attempted. However, the water supply rule proposed by the Corps of Engineers exceeds that federal takeover action, at least as it impacts the Missouri River in South Dakota. Our issues with the proposed water supply rule began in 2008. That was when the Corps issued Real Estate Guidance Policy number 26. This policy requires municipal and industrial water users to acquire a water storage contract prior to the Corps issuing an access easement for a pump site. But the Corps had no process for issuing the contracts. Therefore, the effect of the policy was to place a moratorium on easements to our Missouri River, our largest and most reliable surface water supply in the state. To advance the process, the Corps developed the proposed water supply rule. Under the rule, the Corps considered stored water, which is part of the surplus water, as being all the water in the reservoirs. This creates a monumental change in the law and steals South Dakota's rights to natural flows that by tradition and law are under the jurisdiction of the states. To better understand natural flows, visualize our Missouri River reservoirs with their stored water sitting on top of the river with natural flow flowing underneath. That natural flow represents water that has traditionally been under the jurisdiction of the state. States' rights to natural flows of navigable waters within their borders are constitutionally founded and protected in the Equal Footing Doctrine and Section 1 of the 1944 Flood Control Act. We believe no other federal law usurps these rights. Another concern is equity. The Corps has documented the tremendous benefits the reservoirs supply to people throughout the basin. Yet in this rule, the Corps applies fees to just the upstream states. To require the upstream states, who already have paid so much, to pay the cost through fees with people in the downstream states enjoying those benefits at no cost is not fair or equitable. As Governor Dugard wrote to the Corps in 2012, to impose all reservoir operation and maintenance costs on upstream states alone adds insult to injury. We have about 1,000 miles of Missouri River shoreline in South Dakota, but only about 100 miles are on the two short free-flowing stretches in the state. The rest border the Corps reservoirs. Therefore, 90% of our shoreline is off limits to potential users of Missouri River water due to the Corps' moratorium and the proposed water supply rule. Midland Contracting was one of the first to find this out when the Corps told them they could no longer pump water used for dust control out of the lake behind Big Bend Dam. The amount of water to be used from this reservoir that is 80 miles long, covers 63,000 acres, was minuscule at best. The Corps has held fast to this moratorium, refusing to let a contractor pump water in 2011, even while floodwaters were devastating Pier, Fort Pierre, and downstream communities. Another example is the city of Pier. They've been denied access for several years to the river, which runs right alongside the city to install a small pumping station that would allow the city to irrigate green space with river water, saving time and money. This moratorium remains in place today, as evidenced by the Corps response to our issuance of a temporary water right permit to a contractor on March 19, 2018, to use 90,000 gallons of Missouri River water out of the Owyhee Reservoir. Owyhee holds 6.4 trillion gallons. The Corps response to this use of 0.0000001% of Owyhee water was, and I quote, "All requests for using water from the South Dakota reservoirs are on hold until finalized guidance is received from headquarters. An alternate source of water should be utilized." All of these uses of water were approved by the state through our state water rights program. More detailed objections to the proposed rulemaking have been submitted by Governor Dugard, and I have enclosed those copies of his letters for your information. However, the bottom line is the Corps is attempting a federal takeover of the Missouri River water in South Dakota. This rulemaking effort tramples states' rights and needs to be stopped now, before the Corps finalizes the rule in September. The future of South Dakota, I believe, is linked directly to having a Missouri River water supply that we manage as a state. Please do not let the Corps take that away from us. We ask for your help in stopping the rulemaking in the name of the Equal Footing Doctrine, cooperative federalism, and protecting states' rights under the 1944 Flood Control Act. Thank you, Senator, for the invitation to appear here today.